recycling, community greening.
Sorry.
So one of the things that's really important to us is helping people create a community that is environmentally resilient, clean and connected. And so we form partnerships with organizations, faith groups, businesses, neighborhoods, to leverage resources so that we can help community members realize the changes that they want to see in their communities. So we'll get right into it. Why is recycling important? Other than just, it feels good and it's a way to make your trash can less full. Recycling is actually really important because it reduces the amount of waste that we send to landfills and incinerators. So one thing that a lot of people don't think about is that all that waste that goes into the landfill, especially food waste and things that would normally biodegrade in the open air, can actually create methane when they decompose anaerobically, which is what happens in landfills. So in a landfill, they dump your garbage and then they basically cover it up with dirt. And because it doesn't have access to oxygen, when it sort of biodegrades, but not really. And as it degrades, it releases methane, which is one of the worst greenhouse gases that's contributing to climate change. So that's one reason. And also landfills do fill up and have to be closed eventually. The landfill that was in Durham County was closed, I can't remember, I want to say maybe in the 80s sometime. And so now all of the trash that City of Durham picks up from your house actually gets trucked to, I think, Eastern North Carolina. So it's about an 1.5-hour drive. So there's also all of the fossil fuel that goes into taking your trash, going around the city, picking up everyone's trash and recycling, and then trucking it to the landfill. I will say that the recycling center that most of your recycling is going to is a materials reclamation facility, or MRF, which you will hear people say a lot, or use the acronym MRF, which is what places like Sunoco are in Raleigh. So that's a much closer drive and a lot more sustainable. So that's just another good reason that recycling is important. Recycling also conserves our natural resources. So instead of cutting down new trees to make more paper, using older paper to make new paper, things like that. Reducing mining, because aluminum is actually a super valuable product for recycling. Recycling conserves energy, and recycling also creates jobs and produces an economic benefit. Any questions or comments on all of that so far?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
So where does it go after it goes to the Sunoco Center in Raleigh? Because I recycle everything I possibly can, but I'm concerned because I've been told, well, the glass is actually just ground up and the plastic no longer is bought. Where is it going?
Yeah, so that's probably something I have a little bit less information on personally, but I'll tell you what I do know. So when recycling comes in, if you've never taken a tour of the Sunoco recycling facility, they do public tours. That's something that maybe your congregation would be interested in sometime. I highly recommend it because it really makes it clear like why they have the restrictions that they do on what they can and can't recycle, or like what they can and can't take. So you're right that there are a lot of places that don't accept our recycling from the United States anymore because of contamination, which is something that I'll get into a little bit further on. But it's good to recycle everything you can. But I will say that like curbside recycling, what's called commingled or single stream recycling, it really pays to just recycle like what it will say on the website and the handouts that they give you. because anything that they don't accept is just considered contamination. Um, and so an easy way to think about it is that, so in the actual processing facility, they use a combination of conveyor belts and electric pulses and basically puffs of air, as well as actual physical, like the people that are moving things off. Um, so one of the reasons that like certain kinds of plastic aren't considered recyclable in your curbside bin is because they'll get mistaken for paper. Like the weight and the size of it is very similar to paper, and so it'll get caught into the bale of paper basically and then contaminate it. And so recycling is a business. And when, if you, I can't come up with a great metaphor, but like if you were paying for a product from somebody and it was maybe only about 60% of what you actually were buying from them, eventually you would get frustrated and not want to buy from them anymore. And so that's one of the issues with recycling here in the US. Commingled recycling versus maybe some of you have been around long enough to remember when recycling used to be separated, like your metal, your glass, your paper. They started doing commingled because it basically it made it so more people would recycle more, but it increased contamination of the recycling so much that it's been really hard to deal with that in our recycling system as far as like contamination and things like that. Got a little bit off the rails there. I hope I somewhat answered your question. So this is going into what I was just talking about, why recycle right. So contamination, increased costs, both on the amount of time and the money spent when contamination causes damage to sorting machines. So you might have seen a lot of information that you're not supposed to put plastic bags in your recycling container. And that is because those plastic bags get caught up in the gears and all of the spinning things on the sorting machines at Sunoco. And when it does that, the machine stops. They have to stop the line, go fix it. And that's a lot of time, that they're not working and getting things done. And it's also money spent on fixing the machines. And then the point about contaminated materials being worthless and sometimes without the space, worthless. If there are enough contaminants in a load, like Sunoco will actually turn them away basically and say, we can't take this. There's too many non-recyclable items in it. So it just gets sent to the landfill. So, and here again is the point, curbside recycling is really only meant to process those certain items that the MRF has a market for that they can make money from. So only certain kinds of plastic have like a valuable market. Aluminum is a very valuable market. So definitely recycle aluminum cans all that you can. And paper is actually very valuable too, if they can get it as little contamination as possible. And I'm not exactly sure what the percentage of contamination that's allowed. When we did the presentation back in November, I tried to get some information about that from the representative from Sunoco, but he didn't really elucidate. And this is something that you guys are probably really familiar with. I think if there's one thing I want you to take away from the presentation tonight is that you've probably heard the term wish cycling, which is when you take something that you're not entirely sure if it's recyclable, but you think it might be or should be. But that if it's not something that is actually allowed, that is in these pictures, then you're causing contamination, unfortunately. So especially with plastic, I know that it gets really confusing because of the resin codes that are on the bottom. Those don't actually, even though they have the little triangular arrows around it, doesn't actually have anything to do with recycling. It's just a way for manufacturers to keep track of what kind of plastic it's made out of. So the items in the picture here are generally the only plastic items that you should put into your curbside bin. Um, the way that they ask people to remember it is bottles, tubs, jugs, and jars. So if it falls into those categories, the chances are good that you're okay to put it in there. And so you'll see in here some shampoo bottles, little like, I love that they put Duke's mayo in there. That's really awesome. Milk jugs, soda bottles, things like that. Metal, and this is really important, where it's just food grade metal that they take in your curbside recycling. So no coat hangers, no like big pieces of sheet metal, because those again are things that can mess up the machinery at the recycling facility. And you mentioned something about glass, and glass is actually basically infinitely recyclable. So things like plastic, metal, and paper only can be recycled a certain number of times before they basically lose their structural integrity, which is another reason why, one, I don't like plastic, and two, why it's important to not pick plastic in particular when you're buying things. Anyways, there is an app if you like to use such things, and then the online waste wizard, which is linked right here. You can also just Google Durham Recycling, and the waste wizard is actually, if I were better at technology, I would show you how to do it, but it's really easy. It's literally just a search bar, and you put in what you're trying to get rid of, and it will tell you whether or not it can go into your curbside bin, and it will also give you options if it doesn't. So essentially all of this here that's on the screen is really all that you should be putting in your curbside bin. That's not to say that there are not ways to recycle other things, and I will get into that a little bit later. Does anybody use
Dawn, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Before that, there was a question. Jean had a question in the chat. Should lids be on the plastic containers for recycling? And can lids be recycled separately?
Yes, I have been told, and I practice this at home, I always put the lid back on before I put it in the recycling. So that does a couple of things. It helps ensure that that little tiny piece of plastic actually stays with the other, like the bigger plastic item, so that it doesn't get lost in paper or something like that. And I think that's the primary, like they tell you, yes, like please put the cap on. It's not, it's not terrible if it doesn't, but I would say if you don't put the cap on, you should probably just put it in the trash, because really small pieces of plastic like that are just going to get missed by the sorters. Does anyone use the Recollect app or Recollect app, I guess, or has used the online waste wizard before? I'm just curious.
I'm trying to get on it now. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Is there a minimum size for recycled items? That's another question from Jean.
I know that I've heard that for paper, very small pieces of paper, like I can't remember what, like, probably anything
Hole
smaller
punches?
than like this is just going to get lost. So if you have like non-glossy or just like regular paper, it's actually better to put that in your compost if it's like really small pieces. It's one reason why they don't accept shredded paper in recycling, because it gets scattered everywhere, and there's no way that they can actually collect all those little bitty pieces of paper to get them recycled. And to that note, like shredding is definitely a good way of reducing identity theft, but you really only need to shred things that have personal information like your social security number, credit card numbers, like maybe your birth date, like your address is not considered personal information, because if you own property or if you vote, anyone with the internet can look up your address. So it's really not like, we all get those flyers and stuff that have, you know, to whoever lives here at this address. Like, you can just recycle that as is. You don't have to shred that. I wanted to. Sorry, go
I
ahead.
have a question. How about small pieces of plastic? We use these eye drops that come in individual dispensers, which kills me. I mean, it's great, except that they're all plastic, but they're very small. So we collect them in larger plastic containers and recycle them that way. Does that make sense?
That is an interesting question. There might be certain places that might take those. I'm interested in that myself. I will reach out to the people at Sunoco and ask. My thinking is like, my personal thinking is that, like you said, like, since it's in one container, it should be easier. But I think it depends on what kind of plastic the small pieces are made of versus what kind of plastic the larger container is made of. Because if they have a difficult time separating those, either at the, I mean, they probably wouldn't separate it at the actual recycling facility, but maybe at the end, like the person that's buying the plastic bales, like it might not work for them, because like if they only accept number 5 plastic or something, and all those little eyedroppers are number 2, that might, you know, they might just be like, well, we can't do anything with this. Now we have to chuck it. But yeah, that is an interesting question, and I will make a note of that. And I have Chris's information, so if I find out, I will send it and have them relay it to you. I wanted to put this waste characterization study up because I think that it's interesting to see, and I won't read all of this out to you guys, because if you were at our last presentation, you probably saw it then, and also I'm sure all of you can read. But I think what I wanted to highlight was that about 28% of residential waste consisted of containers and products that are currently accepted in the city's recycling program. And also food waste and low grade paper are a really large percentage present in the waste. I guess I should say a waste characterization study, if you don't know what that is literally they comb through your trash, or like the trash at a landfill, to see what percentage of the trash is made up of what. And this is something that you can do at your business. You can do it at your home. There are companies that will do this for you if you're curious what you could be doing better to reduce your waste. So again, food waste and paper is a really huge contributor to greenhouse gases because of that food creating methane when it decomposes anaerobically. So if you have the possibility of composting either at home or using a composting service, if that is something that's available to you, it's a really, really great way of reducing the amount of waste that you make, and also getting free compost for your house. And there's lots of different ways to do it, and we can get into that a little bit later if people are interested. And textiles, there are actually a couple of really good textile collecting companies. Green Zone, whom you may have heard of, they actually do collect textiles at the Club Boulevard waste, it's like the WRDC or something like that, the Waste Recycling Center on Club Boulevard. They also exist sort of randomly throughout the triangle, and you can put any clean, dry clothes, linens, shoes, accessories, things like that in there. Even if it's like if it's not in good condition, if it's broken or if it's torn, they will use it and make it into basically insulation and things like that. But they will resell good quality clothes and shoes and things like that. And that's how they make their money. Any questions on that? I feel like I'm kind of going all over the place, but it's such a big topic.
No, there was something from Barbara. Were you asking about QR codes? I don't recall. Are you saying recycling or
Like the
or
resin
obscuring?
codes? I wasn't asking anything about QR.
So
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
So, I shred documents and I shred the pieces of paper that have the QR code on it. There's a lot of that, all parts of the credit card bills and statements from the insurance company, because I think that it contains PIN, but I don't know for sure. Do you have any idea?
No, I don't have any idea. That's a really great question. I'm not sure who would know that. Maybe you could call the companies that are doing that and ask them. But yeah, that's really interesting. I'm gonna make a note of that. It's definitely something I hadn't thought of before. See, I'm learning things tonight too.
I have a question about recycling paper. And I feel like once the paper goes in and then the soda can goes in and then the washed out bean can goes in, the paper is now wet. Is that okay? Or do I need to segregate the paper until I put it out at the curb? Are there some strategies, or is that not an issue at all?
I think that generally, as long as the paper is not full of dirt or grease, so the paper, when it reaches the company that's actually going to be recycling it, they do wash it. Like they basically pulp it all together and wash it before turning it into whatever it's going to be next. They do ask that like you don't just put like a huge soggy bin of paper in, but I think that if it's just getting wet from like other things that are in the recycling bin, that I don't think that that's a huge deal, because I feel like they wouldn't accept paper at all if that was the case.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. And this is the.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Can I ask a question?
Sure. Go ahead.
It seems to, the two things that I'm taking away, the reason I'm here is to try to look out for my church and what we're doing for the future. I'm also looking at what I do. It does seem that two things so far that I've got on my mind is, one, it seems to me that we really, to make this really function for us, we need to be really conscious of what comes into the church.
Yes.
Rather than try to dig through and decide whether something's recyclable, we shouldn't be taking stuff into the church that isn't recyclable.
Yes, 100%.
So that's one thing. The other thing that I know the church is not going to stop shredding, and not shredding the stuff that needs to be shredded to identify it and not shred the other stuff. That's going to be hard pressed. Yeah. I'm wondering if the shredded bin can be then dumped into a paper or recyclable container and put into the system that way.
Yeah.
Do you follow me? In other words, recycling shredded paper in bulk. I'm sorry. I'll be quiet now.
I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. So the only issue with shredded paper recycling is that most of the places that accept it are doing it for a charge. But if you have enough to make it worth it, so here's this here. So Shymar Recycling is a local woman-owned recycling business. They will take shredded paper for a charge, and they can do shredding events. I don't know if this is the sort of thing that is within the budget for your church, if it's something that you would be interested in, but it is an option. I don't know of any like separated recycling where you can take, like, it's kind of crazy to think about, because like I do remember back when like you would go and it's like your glass goes in here, your plastic goes in here, your paper goes in here. I think in some smaller county areas they still do that. But I know that the city of Durham doesn't separate their recycling because they don't have to for Sunoco. So I think that your best bet would be to try and like if you have the capability of storing that paper, the shredded paper somewhere, you could do an event like this, like maybe once a year. I don't know how much paper the church creates, but it could also be you offer this to your congregants to come and bring their shredded paper for Strymar to collect. I think that Durham County is offering, they're doing a recycling event or a shredding event in the spring, which I can make sure that you guys get the information on that. But I think it is for people that reside within the county and not the city. The city has said basically that they're not sure when they might do a recycling or a shredding event again, because in the past they have done it at least once a year. And this is kind of something that you can also, like, Google is your friend. Various places will offer shredded paper collection, especially during Earth Month. So you could just Google and see if there's anywhere close to you. Like I know that sometimes schools, like colleges, will do a shredded paper collection. You just basically have to find it. So this would be my strongest recommendation is the Strymar, like contacting them. Maybe they might give you a discount or something because you're a church and tax exempt and all of that. I'm not sure, but I do know that the owner is a wonderful lady and she would probably be more than willing to work with you.
Thank you.
I can, I'll send all of the slides to Chris afterwards for them to share out afterwards. And then this, I just wanted to put up because we mentioned, so there's only certain things that you should be putting in your curbside bin, but there are other things that can be recycled. It just takes a few more steps. So the convenience center that I mentioned on Club Boulevard takes hazardous waste, corrugated cardboard, scrap metal and appliances, electronics, tires, and textiles. So these are things that you don't want to put in your bin, but you can take to the convenience center and they will take it for no charge. And then this is an example of some of the hazardous waste. Antifreeze, they take used oil, they take batteries, and then they take, it's kind of a terrible picture in the bottom left, but that's what the green zone textile recycling bins look like. They have those at the center as well. And then scrap metal appliances and e-waste. I can't tell you how many people I see like just put TVs out on the curb, and I don't know why they don't just take it to the recycling center. So I'm assuming that a lot of you have probably heard about composting. Some of you may compost at home. Does anyone compost at home? Sounds like maybe not.
Yes.
Yes, I got one.
Oh no, yes, yeah. I think it's actually majority. So,
well, that's awesome. I'm gonna say, is it rude to say preaching to the choir in a situation like this?
no, because you are, but ish. They're choir. Some of the choirs here, so.
Yeah. So composting is a really, really great way of helping to reduce your household waste. I know it can be a little bit more difficult if you were talking about, like, say, a church lunch or some kind of fellowship meeting where you have food. unless you have somebody that has a really great composting system at home that is willing to take all of the leftover food bits and stuff home with them.
Currently what we're doing. So,
That's awesome though.
but we're hoping to have when the whole renovation comes, and then we'll have the compost people pick up. But right now we're squirreling it.
I am that person too. So you're in good company. Don't worry about it.
So
But yeah,
Dawn,
yes.
some of that shredded paper could go in the compost, right?
Yes, as long as it doesn't have like plastic and stuff in it.
Right. But it has to be
And I
sure it's just
wouldn't-
paper. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wouldn't put a ton of it. Like if you just have primarily paper, that would probably not work too well. But yes, especially like unbleached paper stuff, like I will tend to, and like napkins and things like that, I will just put that right in my compost pile. So I won't spend too much time on that since it seems like you guys have a pretty good handle on it. I thought this was a really important graphic, and also the contact down at the bottom. If any of you do live in the unincorporated Durham County area, Chrissy is the solid waste program manager. She's really, really great and is good at answering your questions. So North Carolina fills enough trash dumpsters to reach from Durham to DC every 38 days. So basically just to illustrate how much of a trash problem we have. And again, Durham County does have a recycling app too. If any of you live in unincorporated Durham County, they have a really great website also. Here's the Shymar recycling information. So here's, if you do decide to go that route, they have a list of things that they accept. I think that it's pretty much most paper things, just not like credit cards and things like that. This is specifically related to textiles. So again, I think that that was like 11% of the waste characterization study. So those old holey socks that you have, you don't have to throw them away. You can put them in the green zone textile recycling and they will turn it into insulation or sell it to another company that can use it in sort of an aftermarket product. And again, I'm sure you guys have heard about fast fashion, wearing something once or twice and then throwing it away. It's really exacerbating the problem with textiles being sent to the landfill. So yeah, and then another great graphic, about 95% of used clothing can be recycled. And then about 45% of it can still be reused as apparel. I don't know specifically where Green Zone sells their product to, but if you're really interested, you'd probably be able to reach out and ask them because they're also really great at answering emails. So I wanted to, I'm not sure who it was before that mentioned about not letting things come in. So recycling really should be sort of a last resort to get things out. So you've probably all heard of the 3 R's. Nowadays, the going wisdom is that there's 5 R's, and then I think I've seen some that it's also 7, but I feel like this is sort of distilled. So your first line of defense is saying no thank you, like not buying things that come in these little clamshell things, for instance, not buying things that come in a lot of packaging, not taking a bag, not taking a plastic bag from the store, bringing your own bag. So refusing is the first, like, no, I don't want that. I also will bring, I sort of somewhat obsessively hoard like things like this, like that you might get from a Chinese takeout. And then I will save them and bring them to family functions so that people have takeout containers to take leftovers in. So reduce is sort of the other end of refuse. Like if you can't, you can never remember to bring your bags with you to the grocery store. Instead of having like a couple of items in 5 bags, maybe fit all of the items in 1 bag if you can. So reducing your use is also really important. Reusing, I'm sure you guys have all heard the spiel about your water bottles, bringing your own cup when you go to the coffee shop, things like that can really help you reduce your waste. Recycling, and then rot, which is composting. I'm really glad that they included that in the more recent iterations of this. Any questions about that? I'm sure that probably a lot of you have thought about these sorts of things before.
I don't have a question about that per se, but there was a question in the chat about green zone containers that Tom had. You said I think I know where some of them are, but you can, if you know off the top of your head also.
I'm pretty sure their website has a location finder, so that you can go and like put in your address and it'll tell you where there is one close to you. I know the Club Boulevard, I don't know how many of your congregants actually live close to the church, but it's relatively close to downtown. But yeah, I would just Google green zone and then use their location finder to find a bin.
Tom, I don't know close to you. I know close to us, their nearly new shop on Hillsborough has one behind it. There's one on 70 at the like 70 and close to where you turn, that's at an auto place close to where you would turn off to go to Brumley. Anyway, so just but if you put it in, and they're Watt Street I think has one. Watt Street Baptist Church I think has one as well. But
yeah, they might, I'm not sure what it takes for them to like put a bin somewhere, but like, I'm sure you could reach out if you guys were interested in being a collection point.
Don't have the space, but yeah.
Okay, fair enough. I would say another great idea, and it'd be like a really good fellowship activity, is to host a clothing swap. Have any of you guys ever done or been to a clothing swap before? So basically, the idea is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. You take all the clothes that that don't fit you anymore, that it's not really a style that you like, just the clothes that you haven't worn in 20 years, and you bring them all together. I'm sure you guys probably have like a community space where people could bring and put them all out on tables. And then you basically just go shopping at each other's tables and just take what you want. It's a really great way to find some new styles that you might not necessarily have spent money on in the store. And it's also, I think that for me, there's less risk involved. So it's like, there's certainly clothing items that I've seen at a swap where it was like, I'm not sure about this. I wouldn't spend money on it, but since I don't have to pay for it, I'll take it home, try it on, and see how it looks. And then if I don't like it, I can just bring it to the next swap or put it in the textile recycling. What a lot of people will do that host swaps like that, is you can basically do it in partnership with Green Zone, to take the leftover stuff, basically, if people don't want to take it back. Because it is probably the hardest part about taking a swap is when people just leave everything there and then you have all of that stuff afterwards to sort through and like get rid of. But there's also, I'm sure you guys have heard of Goodwill. Scrap Exchange also takes clothes. Dress for Success is a really great nonprofit that helps connect people with clothes for jobs and interviews and things like that. So there's lots of great options for clothes that are in good condition that you don't want anymore. If you can't find a Green Zone thing, I tend to mainly put, like I said, my holy socks and stuff like that in the Green Zone bins, like things that I know other people wouldn't want or couldn't use. Any questions on that?
I think Mary Jo was asking if you know if Rescue Mission and the Salvation Army or any or et cetera, if they give their non-usable donations to Green Zone or Textile Recycle.
I'm not sure. It's a really good question. I think it probably depends, especially on with something like Goodwill, it probably depends store to store, like how dedicated the people working there are. Like, because I'm sure they get a lot of stuff and some of it is not in great condition, like dirty. So I don't know. That's a good question. And I bet that if there's a certain store that you are concerned about, that you could ask them or maybe even suggest it. I'm pretty sure that Scrap Exchange is one of those places that for sure would utilize that service. I feel like that sort of segues great into my next point about using your voice to reduce waste around you. So we have a little bit more control over the things that come into our own home or our church or our businesses, just by using our wallet. So again, and I know this is something that comes up a lot in conversations about equity. It's a privilege to be able to basically like monitor your waste like this. If you're in a space where you're able to be concerned about this sort of thing, you probably have a meal on the table every night. You probably have a home to come home to. You probably have a job. And so this is like, we try not to make this like if you don't recycle, you're a terrible person sort of thing. Or if you don't care about waste, then you're terrible. Like there are levels of accessibility for everybody. And if you have the power of your wallet or your voice, it's important to use it in these instances, because this is where you can really make a difference outside of your own personal sphere. Like you guys, like you have a larger entity around you, the church. And I was really great to hear the comment earlier about being more concerned about what you're bringing into the church, because that is really important. Like not spending your money on products that use a lot of excess or non-recyclable packaging. I was recently very angry because the company that I buy kitty litter from switched from cardboard boxes to plastic bags. Literally the reason that I bought that kitty litter was because it was the only non-clay kitty litter that didn't use plastic packaging. And so now I don't know what to do. It's really annoying. Sometimes you do try to vote with your wallet and it doesn't always work. So also talking to your local business owners, this is a little bit harder. This is something that I think is better for people that are good with like a calm, friendly approach. Like if you've noticed, I really, really like this barbecue joint down the road from my house, but all of their to-go packaging is styrofoam. It's very possible, even in this day and age, that they don't know that styrofoam is really difficult to recycle, that it takes forever to degrade and never biodegrades, and is really harmful to the environment. So go out on a limb, be brave, and just one time be like, hey, like I noticed that you guys use styrofoam packaging. Did you know that there are better options that might even be cheaper? I think part of the issue with styrofoam is that generally it is one of the cheaper options, which is unfortunate. And then also, this is something that's harder for me to remember. I don't get to go a lot, but especially if you're ordering online and there's a little place where you can type in a note to just tell them, I just want the food. I don't need plastic forks. I don't need napkins. I don't need 50 packets of ketchup or soy sauce. Like that's a really great way. And some of you are probably like me and you have a drawer of all of those things because you can't bear to throw them away, even though they gave them to you. And then you take them camping. And then this is something that has come onto my radar more recently. Some of you that may have lived in other states like New York know about bottle return programs, something that used to be a lot more widespread. But there is a movement now to basically get bottle return programs throughout the country. And so you can go to this website and see how you can get involved in that. The more people that care about those sorts of things, the more we can get done. Any questions on that? I feel like I'm starting to lose my voice. I'm talking so much. Okay. And so again, there are other ways of getting rid of your unwanted items. So scrap exchange is one of my favorite places. You guys probably all have your own favorite thrift store. So thrifting is really great, not only for getting rid of things that you don't want anymore that you can't use, but it's a really great option for buying things that you need because they don't have that packaging on them. That is primarily one of the reasons that I like to thrift, is I'm getting items that would most likely otherwise end up in a landfill if somebody else didn't want them. And also there's no more packaging on it, except for maybe they might give you a plastic bag, but you can say no to that. There is a relatively new company called the Recollective that takes harder to recycle items like styrofoam. They do like a cycling monthly thing of like special things. It is a paid service, but I think it's one of those situations where the more people that they have using it, the lower the prices will eventually be able to go. And this was started by a local woman in Durham, so I can't recommend it enough. I personally use a lot of Buy Nothing groups on Facebook. This is a really active one, Bull City Shares, where you can basically go and post, like, I have this bag of t-shirts that my husband outgrew. Does anybody want them? And you literally just post it. Someone will say, yes, I want it. And then they'll come and get it, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. It's really great. And then the Durham Free Cycle listserv is also a really great spot for giving and receiving those kinds of things. And then getting back to reducing, it's really important. There's a couple, I feel like if you've been in Durham for a while, you probably know about Durham Green to Go. There are certain restaurants in Durham that utilize this service. It's also a subscription service, but basically when you go into the restaurant, you'll tell them that you're with Green to Go, and they'll put your food into this reusable hard plastic container. And then when you're done with it, they have collection boxes around the city where you basically go and return it, and then they wash it and put it back into the cycle. I think that the Durham Co-op is one place that uses those, and they both use them to give to the public, and then we'll take them back. Part and Parcel is a relatively new bulk package-free store on Lakewood Avenue. I think it's very close to the scrap exchange. Really great. If you have the chance to go check it out, I would strongly recommend it. You can also take clean glass jars there for them to reuse, because basically they collect them for people to take and refill. And then Boomerang Bags is another Don't Waste Durham initiative, where they're basically having people sew shopping bags out of used t-shirts and then giving them away to the community. And then again, thrifting, really big into thrifting. It's a really great way to reduce the personal waste in your life. And I finally got to the end of my slides. I can stop sharing now unless anybody has a particular slide that they want me to go back to. Okay, I know that was a lot of information. Please let me know if you have questions or concerns or issues. Did you have a question, Barbara? You're muted.
You're still muted, Barbara.
Okay, so I made a comment about clamshells. My family members like to buy berries, and you can't buy them unless you buy a clamshell. Of course, unless it's in season, and then you can find them maybe sometimes out of a clamshell. So it's a real concern. So I generally shop in conventional grocery stores like Food Lion, but sometimes I'll go on a expedition to see if, for example, Durham Co-op does a better job with its packaging. And my conclusion was that Food Lion was better than Durham Co-op in terms of plastic packaging. That was distressing to me. So, part and parcel is, the best you can get, but it's not produce. So,
Yeah, that is true.
so there's a lot of things that I feel trapped, unless I go to extreme measures. I have to buy some food in plastic packaging, and it's really distressing to me. Right.
I agree. And I also haven't really found a way completely around it. I do try to go to the farmer's market as often as I can when things are in season. I do know that certain, like if you have a connection with a farmer or farm or even a home gardener, like what I have started doing is saving those clamshells, because I have raspberry and blackberry bushes at home and other vegetables, and I will basically use those to share my produce at home with other people. And I know that it's especially an issue with younger people, but climate anxiety or general, like, not climate anxiety, but general anxiety around sustainability is real, especially in younger generations. It's something that I struggle with a lot, and something that has helped me a bit was something that my younger sister told me. And like, I don't want to, like, we don't have to get into like talking about communism or socialism or things like that, but there is no ethical consumption under capitalism. And so it's something that's really helped me a lot, with like, some of these things can't be avoided unless you want to go live completely off grid and not buy anything from the store. And I think that it's important to give yourself grace for, those things that you can't always remove from your life. Any other questions or comments?
Well, the idea of the boomerang bags really is neat. And I'd love to find a company that makes quilts out of old t-shirts. That would be a wonderful way to reuse t-shirts, and you could give them away. You could give them to good causes, but anyway.
Yeah. I think there are like smaller folks that will do things like that, like businesses. I don't know of any in particular locally, but I bet that Google could be your friend on that, because I do know that it's a thing. Generally, it's definitely like somebody's grandma making one for their kids or something. And quilts are apparently very time consuming. I have never made one myself, and I don't know that I ever will because I'm just not that talented.
Nor am I.
But yeah, that is a really great reuse idea. I agree.
I have a box that's this big of just the faces of t-shirts waiting to be put into a quilt. So that's
Yes.
that's real. The rest of them turned into t-shirt yarn. Yes.
I have a lot of nostalgic t-shirts that I can't get rid of because like it was my first band t-shirt that I bought at, my first show or something. Thank you guys so much for having me. I hope that you learned a little bit. I hope it wasn't too casual for you. I don't do a whole lot of presenting, so it gets a little bit easier every time, but it's never easy. So
No, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us, and I know that we look forward to all the resources and the continual connection, because I think we really are going to follow up. I know Lanny's going to want to follow up. I know everybody else. A lot of these questions have come up like someone stopped me at church last week and asked me where to bring their textile stuff. So, and I told them Green Zone, but
that's awesome.
now you've confirmed it. So,
Well, I put my email in the chat. I am an open book. If you have questions, feel free to reach out and I will help as best I can. I am also learning every day like everybody else, but I have good connections with people, especially in Durham, like both city, county, and other nonprofits and businesses that are in this realm. So I have good resources and I love to share them.
Thank you very much. We are all more sensitive and more aware because of you, Dawn. Thank you.
Thank you, Lenny.
all right. And for everyone else, just a reminder that we have a blessing of the CSA farm that we work at coming up on March 19th, Sunday. And so that's at Sankofa Farms. If you, I think it's in the bulletin, but I will send it out again. There's many links. It's Sunday afternoon at 2:00. We're going to try to arrange carpools, but, and it's with, and some of the other congregations will also be there. Johanna, is there anything else around that?
I think Mindy's going to be one of the ministers, and I think and then there'll be 2 ministers there. I think from Citywell, the church. Yeah, so I think the farmer said he didn't really think we needed any food afterwards. So if we want to have food afterwards, we need to see if there's
Bring our own. Okay.
We could meet somewhere else. Yeah.
Is there another question? I'm sorry.
When is there a sign up for that CSA?
Tom or Joe?
I saw one go, oh, it's not going to start till May. And there was a survey about how you felt about it. Did you get that?
I don't
I think
remember.
that just went out to people who had participated last year.
Okay.
But yes, originally we were talking about starting in April, but now it's going to be May. Yeah, as Johanna said.
So the sign
So
up
we
will
have
be in
some
May.
time. Pardon me.
Well,
Jo.
probably April.
I wasn't able to sign up last year because I was already in a CSA. So this year I can sign up for this one? When would that be?
Likely April.
April.
Oh, okay.
Cool. All right. Thank you, everybody. And yes, have a good evening.
Thank you,
Thank
Dawn.
you. And again, feel free to
Dawn.
reach out if you have other
you,
questions.
Dawn.
Thanks for inviting me, Chris and Barbara.
Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Night.